The Execution of Sebastian Namirundu by Idi Amin. Introduction. Sebastian Namirundu, a student leader at Makerere University, was executed by firing squad on February 10, 1973 in Mbale, Uganda. His death was part of the brutal repression carried out by Idi Amin's regime, which targeted individuals who were perceived as threats to his rule. The execution of Namirundu serves as a grim reminder of the widespread human rights abuses committed during Amin's dictatorship from 1971 to 1979. Idi Amin's rise to power. Idi Amin came to power through a military coup on January 25, 1971, overthrowing President Milton Obote. Initially, his rule was welcomed by many Ugandans who had grown frustrated with Obote's government. However, Amin soon revealed his authoritarian nature, declaring himself president for life and implementing oppressive policies. His regime relied on violence, intimidation, and extrajudicial killings to maintain control. Repression under Amin's regime. Amin established the State Research Bureau, SRB, a secret police force notorious for its brutal methods. The SRB targeted political opponents, intellectuals, students, and military officers suspected of disloyalty. Victims of the regime were often tortured, executed, or made to disappear. Between 300,000 and 500,000 Ugandans were killed during Amin's reign. Sebastian Namirundu's activism and arrest. As a student leader at Makerere University, Namirundu actively advocated for democratic principles and human rights. His role in student activism made him a target for Amin's regime, which sought to eliminate any form of dissent. In early 1973, he was arrested alongside Tom Masaba, a former captain in the Ugandan army. The regime accused them of engaging in guerrilla activities, although such accusations were often fabricated to justify executions. Public execution in Mbale on February 10, 1973, Sebastian Namirundu and Tom Masaba were publicly executed in Mbale Stadium in eastern Uganda. This tragic event was not only a demonstration of the brutality of Idi Amin's regime, but also a carefully orchestrated political message aimed at instilling fear among the Ugandan people. The execution took place in front of an estimated 20,000 spectators, including men, women, and even children, who were forced to witness the horrifying spectacle. Public executions were a key tool used by Idi Amin to maintain control over the country. By carrying out these acts in front of large crowds, Amin sought to send a clear message. Any form of dissent or resistance would be met with death. The choice of Mbale, a significant town in eastern Uganda, was not random. This region had been known for harboring individuals who were suspected of opposing Amin's rule, and executing Namirundu and Masaba there served as a warning to other potential dissidents. The forced attendance of thousands of civilians ensured that the execution had maximum psychological impact. People were rounded up by government soldiers and ordered to watch as the two men faced their final moments. Many in the crowd were reportedly in shock and horror, but fear prevented them from expressing any visible grief or resistance. Before being executed, Namirundu and Masaba were stripped of their clothes, a humiliating tactic often used by Amin's regime to degrade victims before their death. The two men were then subjected to public interrogation, where they were forced to answer questions in front of the large crowd. This was not a real trial, as the verdict had already been decided: death by firing squad. The accusations against them included conspiring against the government, involvement in guerrilla activities, and inciting rebellion among students and military officers. Despite the imminent execution, Tom Masaba showed remarkable courage. Before being tied to the execution post, he addressed the large crowd and called for those involved in harming innocent people to surrender. His words, spoken in the face of death, were a powerful act of defiance against the dictatorship. He urged Ugandans to stand against oppression and to seek justice, knowing full well that his life was about to be taken. Masaba's final words were an expression of resistance, but they were also a plea for peace and accountability. This moment remains one of the most haunting aspects of the execution, as it demonstrated that even under the most brutal circumstances, some individuals refused to surrender their principles. After their brief interrogation, both Namirundu and Masaba were tied to wooden execution posts. Soldiers took their positions, and without any formal announcement, the execution squad opened fire, riddling their bodies with bullets. Some accounts suggest that the first rounds of gunfire did not kill them instantly, leading to a second round of shots to ensure they were dead. The public execution of Namirundu and Masaba left a lasting impact on the Ugandan people. Many were traumatized by the brutality of the killings, while others became even more fearful of speaking out against Amin's government. The chilling message was clear: opposition to the regime meant certain death. However, while Amin's tactics succeeded in suppressing open rebellion for a time, they also fueled greater underground resistance. Many Ugandans, including students, activists, and exiled leaders, continued working to overthrow the dictatorship, ultimately contributing to Amin's downfall in 1979. The purpose of public executions: Amin's regime used public executions as a psychological tool to instill fear among Ugandans. By making examples out of individuals like Namirundu, Amin was able to suppress opposition and maintain absolute control. This climate of fear discouraged political activism and forced many citizens into silence or exile. International response and Amin's downfall. Despite the atrocities committed under Amin's rule, the international community remained largely passive. Countries such as the United States and the United Kingdom condemned the human rights violations but did little to intervene. It was not until 1979, after a war with Tanzania and internal dissent, that Amin was overthrown and forced into exile, ending one of Africa's most brutal dictatorships. The legacy of Sebastian Namirundu's execution symbolizes the high cost of standing against oppression. His courage and sacrifice highlight the importance of defending human rights and democracy. Today, his story serves as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the need for accountability in governance. Conclusion: the execution of Sebastian Namirundu was one of many human rights violations committed during Idi Amin's rule. His death, along with those of countless others, underscores the brutality of Amin's dictatorship and the need for societies to remember past atrocities to prevent history from repeating itself. Uganda's path toward healing and reconciliation involves acknowledging these past horrors and ensuring that the voices of victims are never forgotten.